July 1981. Joe Pistone was in a room with the Mafia boss, a man he had spent 6 years getting close to. The Mafia had suspected a leak in their ranks, and Pistone was now under suspicion. His heart raced. One wrong move, one misstep, and his cover would be blown, and the Mafia would have no hesitation in taking his life. He had infiltrated the most dangerous crime family in America, and now his life was at risk. But how did Joe get himself into this situation, and what did the Mafia do to him? The year was 1976. The FBI had a massive problem. The Mafia was controlling everything: illegal gambling, drug trafficking, extortion, and even government contracts. The 5 families of New York, Bonanno, Gambino, Lucchese, Colombo, and Genovese, operated like a shadow government, untouchable by law enforcement. The FBI had informants, but they were unreliable, feeding them scraps of information while still fearing the consequences of betrayal. So they decided to do something unprecedented. They would send an agent deep inside the Mafia, not just for a few weeks or months, but for years. That agent was Joe Pistone, and his assignment was simple but deadly: infiltrate, gain their trust, and gather enough evidence to bring the Mafia down. Pistone would become Donnie Brasco, a low-level jewel thief looking to make money and connections in the underworld. The first challenge was to actually get inside. Joe Pistone, now Donnie Brasco, needed a way in, and that's where Lefty Ruggiero made his biggest mistake. Lefty was no low-level thug. He had personally killed 26 people, a feared soldier in the Bonanno crime family. But there was one thing that made him vulnerable. He was desperate for money, and Donnie, he had the perfect fake backstory to win him over. Donnie started spending time with Lefty, talking business, flashing cash, and acting like the perfect recruit. Lefty took the bait. He introduced Donnie to the Mafia and put his own reputation on the line, vouching for him. And in the Mafia, when you vouch for someone, you're betting your life that they're not a rat. If Lefty ever found out the truth, he'd be signing his own death warrant. One night, Donnie was with Lefty when the Mafia decided to send a message. A man had disrespected the family, and in their world, there was only one punishment. Lefty turned to Donnie and handed him a gun. Take care of it. This was the moment Joe Pistone had feared from the beginning. If he refused, his cover would be blown. If he pulled the trigger, he would cross a line that no undercover agent ever had before. He thought fast. Too many witnesses, too much heat, wrong place, wrong time. He convinced them to hold off. It worked, but he knew that next time, he might not get the chance to say no. Donnie had earned the trust of the Mafia, making money and climbing the ranks. But then, things started to go wrong. A stolen truck Donnie helped set up got intercepted by the feds. At first, no one thought much of it. Then another deal fell apart before it could go through, and then another. Whispers started spreading. Someone was leaking information. At first, they suspected lower-level guys, small-time players who had more to gain by flipping. But as time went on, the paranoia grew. Donnie had no childhood friends to vouch for him, no deep family ties in the Mafia. He never got arrested, never seemed to take the fall when things went bad. And worst of all, he was too lucky. Every time a bust happened, Donnie was never the one who got caught up in it. Lefty defended him, swearing Donnie was solid. But even Lefty couldn't ignore the whispers forever. One night, at a Mafia sit-down, a capo regime made a passing comment. Funny how every time the feds show up, Donnie's never there. The room fell silent. For the first time, Donnie could feel the eyes on him. Lefty waved it off, laughing. Yeah, because Donnie's too smart to get pinched. But the suspicion had already been planted, and that's when Donnie knew his time was running out. The Mafia had enough of the suspicions going on. The boss, fed up with uncertainty and fearful of a leak, summoned Donnie for a private sit-down, a meeting where silence meant death. Sonny Black stood in front of Donnie with his eyes locked onto him. No one else was in the room except them. Sonny broke the silence. "We got a problem." Donnie's heart hammered as every gaze in the room bore into him. "There's a rat in the family, and we need to find out who." In that charged moment, Donnie realized this was his one shot to save himself. With no time for hesitation, he leaned forward. "If there's a rat, let's find him." In a desperate gamble, he pointed suspicion to another associate who had recently joined the Mafia. It was a bold move. If his lie was uncovered, his entire cover would shatter. But the boss agreed to look into it, and for a moment, the focus shifted away from him. The paranoia didn't die down. The bosses were still looking for a rat, and Donnie knew it wouldn't be long before they figured out the truth. Then, just as things reached a boiling point, the FBI made their move. Over 100 arrests shook the mafia to its core. The Bonanno crime family was hit the hardest. Entire operations collapsed overnight. But with the arrests came the truth. Donnie Brasco wasn't real. He was FBI agent Joe Pistone. The mafia was humiliated. A $500,000 bounty was placed on his head. Anyone who could find him and take him out would be paid handsomely. But by the time they realized it, Donnie was gone. Lefty Ruggiero, the man who had vouched for him, received a call. He was told to show up for a meeting. He knew what that meant. But before the mafia could get to him, the FBI arrested him first. Sonny Black wasn't so lucky. They shot him, cut off his hands, and dumped his body in a ditch. Joe Pistone, now exposed, had no choice but to disappear forever. His life as Donnie Brasco was over, and after everything he did to bring them down, a part of him would always belong to the mafia. Joe Pistone was a free man, but freedom wasn't what he thought it would be. The mafia was gone from his life, but they never really left. Every time he stepped outside, he felt it. The weight of unseen eyes, the paranoia creeping into his bones. A car parked too long on the street, a stranger staring a second too long. Maybe it was nothing, or maybe it was them. The Bonanno family had put a price on his head, $500,000. Enough to make even his closest friends think twice. Enough to make him look over his shoulder for the rest of his life. He moved constantly, never stayed in one place too long. New names, new cities, new identities. But at night, that's when the past came back. Some nights, he could still hear Lefty's voice, could still see Sonny Black's cold, dead eyes, could still feel the suffocating tension of that final sit-down. What if they had figured it out sooner? What if they had killed him that night? He woke up in cold sweats, heart pounding, reaching for a gun that wasn't there. Joe Pistone had survived the mafia, but Donnie Brasco would never die.